Welcome to Box Office Recap.
Today I'll recap a historical war drama film called Europa Europa. Spoilers incoming. The movie is loosely based on the real life of Israeli author Solomon Perel, a Jew who pretended to be a German to survive the Holocaust. The movie starts with the protagonist, Salek, as a baby during his circumcision ceremony. He narrates that he could vividly remember his ceremony and that he had the same birthday as Adolf Hitler. 13 years later, he takes a bath to prepare for his bar mitzvah or coming-of-age ceremony. He peeks out the window as a Hitler Youth members march outside the streets. One of them pokes his tongue out at Salek and he does the same. He then submerges himself in the bathtub before reading. His sister, Berta, tells him to hurry up and help with the chores. The Germans suddenly destroy their windows and demand they get out. Out of panic, Salek jumps out of their house naked and hides in a barrel until night. A neighbor finds him there and he asks for her to bring him some clothes, but she tells him that she's not allowed to enter his house. She then grabs a Nazi uniform from a carriage and gives it to him. He puts it on and goes home to find that his sister was killed. The family then moved to Poland, his father's birthplace, hoping that it would be safer there. They lived above a movie theater where the owner, a hunchback woman, takes a liking to Salek and lets him in the theater for free. Soon, the war starts and Salek's parents send him and his brother away. They start to leave when the theater owner catches up to them and says goodbye to Salek. They arrive at the riverbank by evening and Salek gets separated from his brother. Salek manages to get on a boat first. In the middle of the boat ride, another boat passes by and tells them that the Bolsheviks or the Russian army are waiting for them on the other side and that Hitler and Stalin had joined forces. The Polish passengers jumped out of the boat, preferring to be under Hitler's rule over Stalin's, while the Jews had the opposite sentiment and swam towards the Bolsheviks. Salek falls into the water because of the ruckus. He is rescued by the Russians. The next day, he waits for his brother who never arrives. Salek then ends up in a Soviet orphanage where he stayed for 2 years along with other Jewish, Polish, and Russian children. They taught him the ideologies of the Soviet Union and of communism. Even though he is separated from his parents, they are still able to send him letters from Poland to Russia because of the pact between Hitler and Stalin. Salek receives a letter from his father telling him that they are fine but they had to move away. Salek is then asked about his class origins, though he doesn't completely understand at first. He tells them that his father owned a magazine store and one of them labels him as part of the bourgeoisie, or the upper class. He then quickly tells them that despite that, he'll work hard to prove himself worthy. A female instructor, Ina, backs him up. He leaves the room and is confronted by one of his Polish peers, calling him a Stalin puppet. A soldier arrives and taunts them with his gun, which causes them to stop fighting. Later that evening, Salek spies on Ina's room from the outside as he is attracted to her. During one class, the Polish boy voices that he's against what the orphanage is teaching them. He believes in God when they're being taught that God doesn't exist. Ina then challenges him to pray to his God to drop candies from the sky. The Polish boy does, to no effect. Ina then tells the other students to ask Stalin for candies and soon, candies are dropped from the ceiling vents. Explosions then suddenly echo from outside and one of the staff announces that Hitler has attacked Russia. The orphanage students and Ina march along the fields afterward. They take over a truck to escape, but an airstrike happens nearby, causing Salek to hide under the truck. The truck drives away and leaves Salek behind. He is then captured by the Germans. While lining up, the soldiers segregate the Jews and load them in a truck. Salek doesn't identify himself as a Jew and lies that his papers were stolen. He then tells them that he's an ethnic German who ended up in a Grodno orphanage, making him fluent in German and Russian. He tells them that his name is Joseph Peters and the other soldiers nickname him Jup. One of the soldiers then calls him to translate for them. They then find out that the man they were accusing was a Jew, is actually Stalin's son. This makes the soldiers favor Salek even more. They take a victory photo and let him join, calling him their lucky charm. He arrives at their camp where the other boys from the orphanage ended up. The Polish boy tries to out him as a Jew, but the soldiers don't understand. Salek then slaps him and the boy jumps over the fence to attack him. The soldiers try to chase him, but the Polish boy manages to evade them before being run over by a truck. Salek faints. A sequence then plays depicting the friendship of Stalin and Hitler before they turned on one another. Salek gets welcomed by the soldiers, although he hides from them when he's urinating or taking a bath so that they wouldn't discover that he's a Jew. One day, the captain asks to see him. The captain begins interrogating him about his past before offering him to stay as their interpreter. During one of their rounds, they find 2 children hanged by the Russians. His companion tells him to look into hate. This starts to confuse Salek on who were his allies and who were his enemies. Salek burns his identity papers and one of the soldiers, Robert, joins him in front of the fire. They start to get closer, especially when he learns that the other soldier is an actor, as it was one of Salek's dreams. The next morning, he takes a bath alone in the shed where Robert attempts to sexually harass him. He runs away and Robert finds out that he's circumcised. He apologizes and comforts Salek, reassuring him that he won't out him as a Jew as he is gay and equally punishable under German law. The 2 of them become closer friends eventually. Robert eventually dies after getting shot, along with 2 of Salek's other close companions. Salek tries to surrender to the Soviet troops. They give him instructions to cross a bridge and carry a rifle so that they'll recognize him. He follows the instructions at night, but the Soviet soldiers suddenly surrender and the other German soldiers think he was trying to charge at the enemy alone. They praise him for his bravery and the captain plans to send him to an elite school in Germany. He also tells Salek that he and his wife plan to adopt him once the war is over as they have no children of their own. He arrives in Germany and is introduced to the rest of the class before he swears allegiance to the country and Hitler. He meets Goode, who is assigned to help him adjust. During one mealtime, he's given some German propaganda as he gets introduced to other students. He also meets Lenny, who is a server in a school cafeteria. One day, during class, they're taught how to identify a Jew based on their appearance and mannerisms. The instructor states that science can perfectly identify the Jews from the rest and he asks Salek to come in front to demonstrate. The instructor begins measuring his head, as well as noting Salek's eye color and his facial features. He then tells the class of his conclusions that Salek had mixed blood and traits common to the East Baltic race, but is German nonetheless. The students soon hear that the Germans have been defeated in the Battle of Stalingrad. They then gather around and sing a patriotic song. Meanwhile, Lenny and Salek start to grow closer, although he never pushed to be too intimate with her to avoid being outed. They walk the streets one day with Goode as Salek's friend praises the equal opportunities given to the young boys in Germany. Lenny and Salek start flirting with one another in front of him, making him jealous. Lenny playfully hides under her sweater before leaving, and this gives Salek an idea of how to modify his private parts so he could blend in better with the Germans, although this causes him pain. She soon introduces Salek to her mother and they dine together. Lenny's mother starts to pray and Salek cries. He tells her that it's because it's been a while since he was in a nice house. Lenny continues to make advances toward him and he denies him every time. On the way home, they discover a Jewish cemetery. Lenny then tells him that she'd cut a Jew's throat if she ever saw one, and this angered Salek, causing him to slap her. He calls her a limp dick before walking away. Later that night, Salek has a nightmare about his family as his sister tells him to look for his remaining family at their address in Poland. He also dreams of Robert's death before Goode wakes him up. He decides to look for his parents. He arrives outside the ghetto but is told that he would have to ride the bus to pass through. He does and sees that the windows are painted but eventually finds a small clearing to peek through. Salek spots a woman who he suspects is his mother, but he was never able to confirm, even after repeating the trip multiple times. Salek visits Lenny's mother, though she tells her that Lenny is rarely at home. He turns to leave but she invites him inside. She then tells Salek that Lenny is pregnant and that she had been trying to get pregnant so that she could offer her child to the Führer. Salek then tells Lenny's mother that Lenny had been avoiding her, although she reassures him that Lenny didn't find it easy to do so. Salek doesn't believe this and grows frustrated. He finds out that the child's father is Goode, as Lenny wanted to make sure the child would be racially pure to be accepted in the Lebensborn program. Lenny also apparently made advances toward Goode because Salek never initiated with her. Her mother had tried to tell her then that it was because he respected her, although she had her own suspicions that this was not the truth. He then tells her that he's not German but a Jew. He falls to the floor, crying. Lenny's mother tells him that she knew it from the start and comforts him, telling him that she won't tell his secret to anyone. She also tells him never to tell Lenny. Later, he goes back to his room and starts beating up Goode for being intimate with Lenny. One of their superiors enters the room and tells Salek that he needs to go to the police and present them with his papers. Salek panics and asks why, to which the superior tells him that they just needed to clarify some things. The next day, he goes to the office and presents him with the papers he has. They then ask for his certificate of German purity and he tells them that he left it back in the Grodno orphanage. The official then says that he will write to Grodno to send it to them. He also tells Salek of Germany's plan to fake a retreat as a strategy to win the war. He becomes scared and thinks that he would be outed soon. He then leaves the office and was about to meet with Goode outside when an airstrike happens. Salek survives but Goode dies. This also saves him from being discovered as a Jew. The war escalates and the students are forced to join the fight. He is told to shoot an enemy but he hesitates. He eventually escapes, dodging the shots aimed at him by the other students. He goes outside and surrenders to the Russians. Salek explains that he learned Russian from the orphanage and that he was part of the Komsomol. The soldier calls him a traitor and a spy, and then Salek tells him that he was just trying to survive because he was a Jew. They then show him pictures of the Jews who were executed during the Holocaust. Salek tells them that he didn't know about that as he was told that the Jews would simply be shipped to another country. One of the soldiers grabs a gun and gives it to one of the prisoners, giving them the freedom to shoot him down. The prisoner starts to aim but someone begins calling him by his real name. He turns around and sees his brother, who had just been liberated from a concentration camp. His brother, later on, tells him that their parents were already dead. He also tells Salek never to share his story as no one would ever believe it. He asks for Salek's help to get up and they piss together freely without the fear of being exposed. They soon migrated to Palestine and Salek decides to fully embrace his Jewish identity. He also doesn't hesitate to pass on his beliefs to his children. The movie ends by showing the real Salek singing a Jewish folk song. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.